This will be a tutorial to make a disk break in Fusion 360. This is the general picture we're looking at. The actual dimensions, color, shape, everything doesn't actually matter. We're just using this as an inspiration. Follow along. Size-wise, I'm thinking this thing will fit inside a car, so just that's the perspective that I'm looking for when it comes to the size of my disk break. So if you load up Fusion 360, you'll have a screen like this, or potentially you'll have this on the side. This tab here on the side is going to have like a storage for all your work. You can have folders here to make it easier for you to navigate through your work. And then I just pressed new by this file button over here, and then opened up this tab over here. Or you can also press this plus button over here, and it's like in a browser like Chrome or wherever, you can make a new tab. Fusion is an additive style CAD software, where additive meaning we start with some sort of drawing and then we enlarge it to, so we start with a 2D drawing and we make that into 3D and then we modify it. So we're going to start, if we're going to make this disk break, we should start by making the disk part of the disk break, the circle. So the first thing we're going to do, actually before we start, we might get stuck at some point, just for the sake of us, just for the sake of me showing the commands, let's pretend I have a box here that we can deal with later. So you have your image over here in Fusion. So you're going to have your model. You can navigate around the object. If you have a mouse, if you press the center mouse wheel, it will pan your object around. Or if you press Shift, you can also rotate the object around. Now, if you're doing this on a trackpad on a laptop or whatever, in the top left-hand corner, you also have this square over here. This is a visual representation of your drawing. You can either press one of the views. So if we press the right view over here, it will align the view up in that direction. We can also press corners and it will align that way, or edges, and it will do the same. We can also click with our left mouse button and rotate this around. So you're going to be doing this rotation if you're on a laptop. Down here, I am supposed to have things down here, but they're not showing up. There's supposed to be view tabs down here. I assume on my version of Fusion, I must have removed them. Let's say you have an object and you either zoom in too far or you zoom out too far and you don't know what's happening with your design, and you think you've lost it. You can always press over here, hover in the top right. You see the home, a picture of a house. If you press that picture of a house, it will get your image onto the page in the orientation that is the best way to fit it. This is also important if you don't realize you had a part of your design that's out to the side and you may have forgotten about it. If you press that home view, it's going to get your whole model onto the screen. On these settings over here, we're currently in orthographic, which is what I like to do it on. You can also make it perspective, which means it's supposed to make it look more 3D, or more realistic. But I just keep it as orthographic. All right, so let's just delete the work we just did here. So let's actually start making a shape. Fusion is an additive maker, so we're going to start by making a 2D shape. This is called a sketch. Please make sure you're in the Design tab over here, right? You want to be in the Design tab, and up at the top, you want to make sure you have Solid selected. If you have Surface or Mesh, you'll see they're different colors that we don't use. Well, I'm not going to teach you with those because they're not useful to us. We're going to make sure we're in the Solid realm. We're going to press the Create Sketch button. As you click this, we see here in the corner, we have Cartesian planes, like mathematics. If you see over here the cube we have on the top right, we have X, Y, Z. So this means the mathematical planes, and these yellow diamonds, they are showing that is a 2D plane. they're also flat. And as I hover my mouse over it, we can see how it changes. It's telling me what different perspectives we're going to be looking at. I want to do a disc. This is going to be somewhat horizontal, so I'm going to do this plane over here, the ZY plane. As I hover my mouse over it, when I click it, the screen will rearrange to align it up to that face. So now I'm going to start by drawing what my disc will look like. Over here, as we click that sketch button, now we have a new menu over here. If we see here, we've changed to the sketch menu. We can create, then later we can modify, and these are, we can add constraints if we want things to be certain sizes. And when we're done, we can press the finish sketch button. So when we're starting this sketch, we're going to start by doing a circle. If you hover over the circle, we can read, we have this text box here, center diameter circle, and it says C in brackets. So that means if we press the letter C on our keyboard, we can also shortcut to this command if we don't want to manually press it. But it also says how we can do this. We can create a circle by using the center point and a diameter. Select define a center point and then specify a diameter. So I'm going to press this with my left mouse button. See how I have like a reticle? I can choose, I want mine to just be in the very center. And my grid is aligned. It's going to snap to the grid. So I click this, and now when I drag it out, I can choose a diameter. So if I'm picturing a disc brake in a car, I'm imagining about 25 millimeters is the outside of the disc brake. So over here, I can type in 25, and it's by default going to go to that length. Now, CAD, this Fusion 360 is actually a smart software when it comes to these numbers we put in here. We can actually change it. If I only know the radius for some reason, I can type in 12.5 and multiply. Where is it on there? Multiply by 2, and it will do that equation. So that's good for finding like midpoints. You can also define specific lengths to do it algebraically. So you can get a length on another part of your design, and you can say define this as length D, and then in another sketch you can say this is 1.5D in its size. Press enter when you've done that. Now we see here, I don't know what you can see on the projector, but the center is like a light blue. This means this is a closed surface. So that means that Fusion can use this later to turn this into 3D. If I just did a line, for example, I just did a line like this, and I keep doing these lines, I'm making up these lengths. See how it's not a closed surface, but once I do this, it turns into a closed surface. It needs the sketch to be a solid 2D shape in order to turn into a 3D shape. All right, this is going to be my main thing. Let me look at my inspiration some more. So now the disc brake, I'm going to do the center part of the disc as well. So I can click this, and I'm going to go get my diameter. Now I will make this, I could just make this 14, sure. I can make this diameter 15 over here. So now I'm going to press the finish sketch button, and I'm just going to look at this in the 3D. So now I have this as a 2D sketch. Once I've finished, 14. Once I have these two, I'm going to extrude this. Extruding is how they turn 2D shape into 3D. By, think of it equivalent in maths, when you have an object and you make a prism. So a triangular prism, a rectangular prism. Same thing, we're getting a 2D shape and we're turning it into a prism. I press extrude, and we're going to open up this little extrude tab over here. I want to extrude. I want to press the profile, so I want to press what shape I want to extrude. So I'm going to select this outer ring over here, and it should say one selected, and we can visually see that it's a darker blue. Then we pick which direction. We're just going in one direction. I can choose the distance I want to extend it by. Now I'm imagining this disc brake I'm going to make this part 2 millimeters. So on the distance, I can write 2 millimeters, or alternatively, I can write it in this box as well over here. This box and these boxes are the same feature. I can also, is that 2 millimeters? My dimension was in centimeters, so I've got to change my sketch dimensions, but we'll do that. So when I type in 2 centimeters, I press that and I press OK. This disc is looking quite chunky for a disc break. So what actually happened when I was doing my sketches, I was talking in millimeters and not centimeters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over here. We have our timeline at the bottom. Now I know in the whiteboard, hold on, let me fix that. Over there on the bottom of the screen, you have a timeline. I'm going to right click the sketch one, which is this one over here. I'm going to right click this and I can press edit sketch. Now I have these shapes over here. I'm just going to double click the shapes that I made. Hold on, how do I do this? So I'm going to double click this dimension over here. So this, I wrote it as this formula over here, 12.5 times 2 millimeters. So what I'm going to do here, instead of millimeters, I'm just going to write centimeters. And it should make it large. When I press this ring over here, does this one also have a dimension for me? No, this one doesn't work. Click this. This one is going to be 114 centimeters. So by default, where'd you go? 14 centimeters. By default, Fusion already has a like a scale in there. So if you write centimeters or millimeters, it's going to really organize that. This is really useful, especially if your design is using inches. Like if you're putting in an imperial unit in there for some reason, or you want to put in meters, millimeters, centimeters. If you write in the unit when you're doing the dimension, it will automatically scale that for you. That's quite useful. Now, this over here is 2D, but when I press Finish Sketch, it automatically changed the drawing to match it. So now it is looking like the thin part of the break that I want. I didn't do the center part. Right click, edit feature. Over here I have 2 profiles selected. I don't want 2 profiles. I don't want this middle part. Yeah, so I got this disc break. All right, disc break accomplished. Now let's get these, let's be a bit fancy. And we want to get these dots over here. All right, we want to get these holes along here. We're going to start by making a sketch. Now, we can use our same sketch thing that we used before, but let's learn something new. A sketch can be started on any flat surface. It has to be flat. The angle doesn't matter, but it won't work on a curve. So our disc break over here, this is a flat surface. So I can actually highlight my mouse over this flat surface, and we see how it highlights itself. So that means I can make a sketch on this surface. I could also make a sketch on the back surface. So I'm going to press this. I'm making now a sketch on this surface. Now I need to make a bunch of holes, but before I do the holes, I need to, so these holes are like kind of curved, right? They're curved to make it look, I don't know if it has any engineering relevance, but it makes it look cool. So we may as well do that. So we want to make the curve. We're going to use a fixed point spline as a way to do a curve. So we're going to click this button over here. Fixed point spline, we press our starting points and we press our ending point. So I want to end it out here. And then we press the enter button. So now we have, this over here is a spline. So we see that we have the blue line in the center and we have these green parts out here. Those people doing accelerated maths, what's happening here is these green lines are making the derivative. They're changing the angle, what do you call it? As the angle of the curve. Yes. So we can do that by changing this green line, by bringing this down. I can change the angle that that the curve meets that point. And by pulling the green further away, I force it to be like a larger radius curve. So what I can do here, if you don't actually care about the actual numbers and you just want it to make it how it looks, you can just change these green lines so you get a curve that's something you like. Do I like this curve? There we go. So now I have this line over here, and if I hover my mouse over it, cool, I see I have this curve here. I'm just going to finish this sketch for now. Finish. Next, going to start a sketch, going to make another sketch, and in this sketch over here, I'm going to make a hole. I'm going to press circle, click it, and these holes, these can be small. These are going to be 4 millimeters, 4 millimeter holes. And if we look at our design over here, we have these small holes. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, and they're evenly spaced. We're going to use a tool. We're going to use this tool over here. We're going to use the is it not here? Hold on. So we're going to make, I think we have to do it this way. Okay, so we've made a curve. So we've made a circle. We get that circle. We're going to go extrude this circle. Oh, we're trying to just select this circle. And, right, so we've just selected this circle. And if I go backwards, this circle will now make a hole inside this. So what's happening here, this is an extrusion, right? If I go and pull it over here, whenever we're extruding on a surface, if it's making a new material, sorry, if it's producing material, it's going to try to think you're joining two objects together or you want to make a new object on something. So think you have like a Lego block and you're putting another block on top of it. If you get your extrusion and you go backwards, see how its color changes to red? It's assuming you want to cut a hole in something or cut your shape out. So if I do this and I press OK, now this should have our hole inside here. Now we need to make more of these holes. So what we're going to use now is we're going to use the pattern tool. If we go to pattern over here, we want to make patterns. And so pattern is we get the same object and we're going to make multiple copies of it. So we want to make this pattern. We want to make a pattern along a path. So we press this button over here. The object we want to copy is we want to copy a body. No, we want to copy a face work. We want to copy this face. So this face is this circle in here. And the path we want it to follow is this line over here. So I've clicked that line under the path, and then if I pull this arrow, we can see here now we have these holes that came out. And I can increase the number by increasing this number over here. 5. So there's now 5 of these rings. Right? And I press OK. And now that hole, now we have 5 of them. Right? This is good. So now we have this over here. We need to copy this. If we look at this break over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's about 19 to 20 of these 5 holes. So, and they're around. This is a disc break, so everything's going to be in a circle. So we're going to go to create. We're going to do a pattern again, but this time we're going to do a circular pattern. We'll click this. Again, our bodies, we want to select our faces. Now we want to make sure we select all of our cylinders here. You've selected all of our cylinders. We need to pick an axis which we're going to rotate around. So when we click our axis, well, we have these lovely circles here. So you can either pick, the circumference of the circle, or you can press the face, that is, like if you imagine like the wall of a cylinder, or because we designed it to go through the origin, we can also press this like the x-axis to rotate around. That's not going to always be the case because you're going to eventually get drawings that are not aligned with that, but you can in this case. You have options. So I just clicked one of these. It rotates around. I can press, if you look by default the copy is always 3. So I'm going to change it to 19. Ooh, look at that. That's looking legit now. If I press OK, ooh, look at that. Holes. Nice. Now, if we look at this diagram over here, we also notice that this disc isn't solid. Well, it's solid, but it's not. It does have gaps in the middle, right? Because to allow for cooling in the real world in the braking system, and we can accommodate for that. This is why I made this 2 millimeters thick. So we want to copy it and get a second one to the side. So how I'm going to do that? I'm going to go and I have this body over here. I'm going to go to modify, move/copy. I'm going to press the body of this over here under selection. And I'm just going to offset it in the X direction. Let's say I'm going to offset it 5 millimeters. And I want to press, I want to say create copy, move it 5 millimeters. Make sure you have that create copy box ticked, otherwise it's going to just move it and not copy it. So now if I zoom in, we see here that there's actually I've made 2 copies of this now. All right. So the next thing our brake has, based on this image, it's kind of hard to tell, but there's some sort of metal structure in the middle here, right, to hold those 2 plates together. So we're going to do that. We're going to actually reuse our line we had here from our previous example. And just for the sakes of these drawings, it's going to be easier if we hide one of our bodies. So I may as well show you how to do that. Over here, this I button, the I means visual, like hide. If you click it, it should de-highlight itself, and now we only have one that we're looking at. It's going to be easier for us to work on the inside, and then once we're done, we can press the I to bring it back. So I want to make a curve using this. Right, so how I'm going to do that is I am going, how should I do that? What's the best way to do this? I will go to edit. I'm going to make a new sketch. A new sketch on this plate. Now, as some of you may have already experienced, if I'm making a new sketch, if you sketch it on the same plane that there's another sketch on, sometimes it will let you attach objects to it. This case it won't. Right? It's not letting me attach something to here. So what we want to do is, I don't want to edit that original sketch because then any changes I make, that line might disappear and it might affect my other parts of the sketch. But I want to include it into my sketch. So under the Create button, there's Project and Include. Project and Include means use other stuff from other sketches in this one for reference. So I'm going to go to press this one, Project and Include. I'm going to press the Project button, and then I'm going to press this curve. So now, and then when I press OK, we see now, well, it's a purple curve. So purple means this is a thing that you can use in your sketch right now, but it's not controlled by this sketch. This shape is controlled by another sketch. But now I can, if I get my circle, I can actually attach to this line. See how the crosshairs change? So I can actually use this now. So I want to, the shape that I want is, I just want to make here, I want to make a, how big? Let's say a 6mm circle here, and I want to make a 6mm circle here. And I want to make a curve that goes along here. So I will, what's the best way to do that? I'm going to press this offset tool, press this line, and I want this to be offset at 3mm. And I want this to be offset. So I skipped forward. So I've made those two circles there. We can do that. But now this line over here, I could just redraw the curve, but I want my line to perfectly match, right, for the sake of my drawing. So I'm using the offset tool. Offset is like make a line that's, it's going to I want to say parallel, but obviously parallels, you've heard of straight lines. Offset just means make a line that's the same distance apart from this line at all times. So if I click this line over here and I press offset, by default it wants to go by this side, and I've already done one there, but I can also go in the reverse direction. And I know that my circles I made at the end are 6mm. So this is a time where you've got to make sure, if you're not using my numbers, make sure your numbers match for this. If you're using 8mm diameter circles, this has to be 4. But I'm using 6, so I can change over here. This one's going to be -3. And if I press OK, we now see that the colors actually, that's a bit freaking out. The color's actually lighter blue now, so this is a sealed shape. I am now going to finish this sketch. Finish sketch. And I have this weird looking curve here. What I'm going to do with this, I'm going to go press extrude. And I'm going to press all the shapes that are relevant to what I want to extrude. Now I want to extrude all this geometry, right? And so the idea is these are going to come out, and these curves is what's going to be between the two discs. I'm extruding it out. I believe if it's 5mm, but the disc is 2mm thick, so I think it only has to be 3mm for my design. Now by default, when I extrude it out, it's going to join. This might be fine, but in this case, it's not fine, because it's covering up those holes that we just made. So what I want to do is, instead of making it join, I want to press this button over here and I want to say new body. So the difference is, if I did new body, when I finish this, it's going to be body number 3. So I can then move that around. If I didn't, it would still be part of body 1, and I couldn't move where that curve was. So I have body, and if I press OK, we should have body number 3. and I can move this around. The reason why I want to move it around, because I can go to over here, move and copy. I want to select body number 3 is what I want to move. The movement type I want to rotate it, and the axis I want to rotate it around is this center axis over here. So I can move it around like this. Right? So how many degrees? What is, so if each of these is 3, each of these is, so now I can obviously do it by hand, or I can put in the exact angle. I want to actually find the exact angle that's between these two holes. So we can find that out mathematically, and then later we'll pattern it, so we just have to get it working once. I know this is 360 degrees, and I divide it by 19. So each of these holes should be 360 divided by 19, right? That's a whole space. So if I put this in brackets, and I press divided by 2, I should get the point that's exactly halfway. So this is another example of how you can actually put maths into this, and it's kind of useful. Press OK. This one I don't need to make a copy. This is my real piece. So we have this over here. Look at that. That's looking nice. And if I show my other body, I can confirm that. Look at that. Wonderful. Wonderful. All right. Now you have this. We're going to do the same thing we did before. Now we're going to do create pattern, circular pattern. We're not going to do faces. We're going to do body. We want this over here. The axis we want it around the this axis over here. 19. Okay. And now look at this. We have a lot of bodies now. Right? We have a lot of bodies. But I'm going to pause at this point. All right, so at this point, coming back from the pause, you have all these bodies here. Now, you can be expected in a drawing to have these many bodies, but we want to really simplify it, especially since this is one solid piece, this is one piece of metal connected together. So what we're going to do is we're going to press the combine button. If we go to modify and we go to combine, that's where we're going to join bodies together. They join as long as they are touching. And because we did one sketch on the other surface, they should be touching. So it should work. Combine. The target body, I think, is the main body, so we'll press body 1. And the tool bodies, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide body 1, and that means every other body here, I can click and drag. These should all be the other bodies we're going to join it to. So you should have 19 tool bodies. And if I press OK, by default, I want to join them together. If I press OK, and I unhide the thing, these are now all one body. If you follow this command, you should have 2 bodies in total. Right, so at this point, you should have 2 bodies. If I reveal it, we see here that, yes, these are now 2 bodies. And just like I combined it last time, I can do the same combination again. I can press combine. I want this to be my target body and this to be the other one. And I can press OK. And so now this is all one body, and I can actually rename this body now. Instead of body, I'm going to call it disc. Right? Because this is definitely the disc of a disc brake, and it's starting to look like that actual piece here. Now if we actually zoom in, we see here that we have these curves here, and you see these very sharp edges. That's not very realistic. So what we're going to do is we want to highlight what do we want to do? We want to press these lines in here. We want to use this filleting tool. So over here, I highlighted this whole thing with the filleting tool, and I can change this filleting. Let's say we want 0.5 millimeters in the filleting tool, or we can go even larger for the sake of the video. We can press 1, and if I press OK on this filleting tool, look at what happened to this thing. See how this part over here, how it did a curved line throughout it? So this looks more like a realistic part that's being like a machine is cutting this. For the sake of consistency, you should do this with all the parts, but I'm not going to show you that on the video. I don't necessarily know if there's a fast... There might be a fast way to do it, actually. If I do this view over here in the top, and then I go to Filleting Tool, and then for the edges and features, if I just press this now... you just got to go through and click them all. Now, before you do the filleting tool, you should make sure you save your work, because this is the most likely time. This is a very high likely crash feature of it. But it looks like I've done all these circles, and the way I can see if they're effective, where is my view button? No. Yeah.
Well, could you like fillet it and then do the pattern? Like, so you fillet one thing and then you like pattern it around it?
Yes. The only issue is then you'd have to cut it, because I think for it to be filleted, it has to be one solid part. So you can do that. You can do it once, and then there's a way you can slice a piece off and then copy it and make it into a circle. Change my view. I can't load it up right now because I can't get back to my view feature. When you get into the point where you want to save your work, you press the save button up here. Pick a name, so this could be our Disc Break 2023. Pick a location, and you just press save. Now, Fusion 360 by default uses cloud storage, so it's saving it not on your device, it's saving it on the web, which means in theory you can log onto another computer. Like I log into my home computer and my laptop, and they both have your designs for Fusion. Means you can only be logged into one device at a time, and so if you change your device, like if you're making it on your home computer, make sure you close your Fusion on your laptop. When we do our next lesson, we're going to put more detail. We're going to make this outside component, and we're going to start rendering it to make it look nice in 3D.